Hello, and welcome back to Birth the Middle Way. My name is Emma, and I'm here today with Sam, as well as a new sister, Ali Shaffer. She is a shamanic midwife, a mother of six, and a naturopathic doctor. And she has also walked the path of infant loss in the birth space. And it's the deepest honor to have you here. And today we're going to be discussing how to show up to infant loss. We're going to be learning a bit more about that and hearing more of Ali's story and seeing the overlaps within my own story and seeing what we've shared together and similarities and differences and yeah, just weave together some potent medicine. So welcome, Ali, and if you want to give yourself an introduction, say hello, and tell us a bit about your story.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. I love what you all are doing. I spent some time on the website and checked it all out, and very beautiful, beautiful magic and medicine, and especially for such a sensitive, vulnerable space. And it's really refreshing to see it represented out there in the world in such a open and authentic and loving way. So thank you for that work you're doing. Yeah, I'm Allie, as she said, and it's been quite a wild ride of healing after um I call it like healing after death in birth, because um so there's so many nuances to um healing after birth or healing after a death. But when you're at the gate of birth and then you are abruptly met with death, it's a very interesting portal to be in, and a really difficult threshold to stand in and be in the space of. And there is not a lot of, as you know, talk about it, which is why you're doing the podcast, right? So most mothers are left to kind of pick up the pieces and carry on and kind of hush it away or sweep it under the rug and not really feel it. And I feel, in my experience now on the other side, like as I was a birth worker before, I probably could have thought I got it, but afterward I really did, see that um it's just not talked about enough. And until you're faced with it and you're like, fuck, what do I do? Um, you know, it's just very confronting. And I wish there was a space, which is kind of how I came to be on the podcast. I wish there was a space where this was shared maybe before birth comes, during the prenatal period, so mothers can prepare and gather whatever resources, information they feel they might need. And my story is very unique, and I do have some slides to present, which kind of helps the flow and organizational of it all, especially for those who are more visual learners, and need some help with putting words, with pictures. Um, but I find that um, in this work, it's not, once we get to that threshold of like, what do we do? It's not talked about. And when then we just had a birth and now we just had a death, and we're now trying to organize our own child's funeral and how to heal and what do I do next and what steps do I take, especially if it's in a home birth or free birth space. And so this kind of is a big part of, I mean, my mission is very grand and expansive, but a very small niche of that is just consciousness, actually, is my mission. I'm a bridge of consciousness. And so this, I believe, was just another stream and mode for spirit to be like, okay, now you get to be a bridge here as well. And like bring death back into the hands of the community and back into the hands of the people. Because before this, I didn't realize I actually had already studied to be, I was a death doula. But so that's how I knew some of these things already. But I didn't realize that I would need them. And so again, as I share my story, and it's quite unique, it was very, it was brought very clear to my attention that this was one of those paths of consciousness that I was called to be a part of. And though it was deeply painful, it's been also very beautiful. And it's really hard to say that because there's a lot of judgment around that. Like, how could you say such a thing? Um, and again, while it is deeply painful, there's been so much beauty that's come from it. And it's hard to see that. All of that to say, I find that when we really, back to my original point, when we face it and we don't just push it away, I find that we do heal a little bit greater when we're um, willing to go there, willing to face it. The pain doesn't linger and follow us along for the rest of our lives. I know moms who've their baby lost their babies a decade ago, 2 decades ago, and it's still like they're still deeply affected on a daily basis. And while that's okay for them and their situation, I have other children I have to live for, have missions I have to follow, and I don't have the time or space. I know it sounds awful to just lament for the rest of my life. I needed to grieve hard, grieve deeply, and then not let it go. That's not what happened. Integrate. I needed to integrate the pain so that I could continue living because I could not stop living. And so, yeah, that's kind of what brought me to this. And I met Sam through the midwifery program we're both in through the Matrona, who talks about the quantum aspects of midwifery and the spiritual aspects and the beautiful aspects. And the topic of infant loss came up, and I was honored to get to share this there. And so, yeah, that's kind of where we all merged and all of that stuff. And so I can go ahead and share my screen here. It helps me also stay on track so I don't get lost in the sauce of my own words and all that jazz. But yeah, so are you able to see on your end, everyone? Just double checking.
It's perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
You can see.
So,
I just want to
ah,
say before you go on, I mean, so many threads of what you shared was just so beautiful. And one question that I have not for you so much, but just for any listeners, for myself, for for anyone that's present, is why can't death be beautiful?
mm,
Why can't we find beauty in death? Because you are sharing that you found so much beauty in there, and that might trigger some people, or maybe some women, some men listening might disagree with that, but we can always dive a little bit deeper into that and ask, like, what is the definition of beauty?
mm,
There's indigenous traditions that speak about walking the beauty way, right? And that doesn't mean avoiding what is painful. That doesn't mean not acknowledging the difficulties. That doesn't mean you're not going to fall apart or you're not going to cry and it's not painful. That's not what that means. And so just this invitation to ponder what is beauty and how can we find beauty in so many things. How can we find beauty in what is difficult?
I love that. Absolutely. Thank you.
And I just want to
Um,
add to that, Ali, I feel like in, the presentation of the ceremonial piece that Emma mentioned in the opening, when I first interacted with your story, it was actually, the ritual and the ceremony that you were able to activate that I feel like brought so much beauty into your experience and your story. And, was really a piece of inspiration that I walked away with in the wake of your story was we need ceremony and ritual, and it actually is the vehicle of
Mm,
perpetuating and cultivating that beauty in so many circumstances of the human experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and I there's just so many pieces that now, Sam, as you have shared, and before we get into the slides, even, Ali, you were sharing how you had other kids to look after. Like you were in the role of mother and you had things to do. You couldn't fall apart. And I remember hearing my grandmother saying that when her third born passed away. And just this, I have to keep going. I have so much love that I need to give these other children. And she still had other children yet to be born, but she had eight others, eight
mm,
others living that she needed to take care of at the time. And there was no stopping,
mm,
and that in itself was such a medicine for her that she couldn't fall apart, she couldn't stop. And there's even a story where like my uncle passed away, he was 8 years old, and right after he passed away all of the other kids got sick, and she needed to tend to each and every one of them as they all got sick. And the way that the story is told by every single person that lived it is just that helped her get through it. That helped her continue to stand and strengthen, because again, grief isn't something that just goes away. It's something we learn to walk with, and we learn, and you use the word integrate. We learn to integrate it into all these areas of our life. And I mean, we this is our first meeting, our first conversation, so I can't really speak to too much, but it sounds like you're walking with your grief so beautifully, and I'm so inspired by the way that you are walking with your grief and with this child in the stars that you're still mothering. And I mean, you're 5 years almost in, and I'm 15 months into my journey, 14 months into my journey. And so
mm.
we're in different seasons, yeah, but I'm just like, I can see a potential future version of myself, and I'm like, oh my God, I can survive this. I can rise
Mhm.
again and stand up. And
You are surviving it, Emma.
You can, you are, you're literally doing it. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. This is juicy. Thank you. So this this slide show, if you will, was um cultivated with education in mind. So I'm gonna strip all of that education piece away and kind of just like share from a just like woman to woman, mother to mother way, as opposed to like in a teacher way. So just to throw that out there before I begin. But yeah, so healing after death and birth, these are like rituals and sacred ceremonies for um, grieving mothers and their birth supporters. And so, a big piece that I always want a lot of people to know or understand when they're working in the birth space, they're loving anyone that's in the birth space. Really, it's not just about birth workers. All of these concepts go carry over. Like if we know about birth and we're projecting our own beliefs and onto her, it doesn't matter. It's the same. We are all. I genuinely believe that all women, in a sense, are birth workers because back in our ancient times, we all were at the threshold of birth often, and we are still walking with our sisters as they birth, our daughters, our aunts, nieces. So all of this stuff does apply. And so I always want people to remember it is not our right to know anyone's destiny. And this is something that the Great Wapio says a lot. And that I genuinely knew at a young age that I would lose a child, but I really did push those thoughts away as an adult. And in my last pregnancy, I had these fears that came up all of a sudden that I hadn't had with my other children previously. I even like went to go get an ultrasound, which was not like me. I kept checking in and like I just was always in doubt. And no one was able to go there with me. Everyone just pushed it away and said, "No, you're fine. Everything's gonna be fine." Um,
you know,
you
and
know, you're just fearing it. Go ahead.
and I had a very similar experience actually, that I just wanted,
Mm,
since I was 10 years old, I had a fear that I would have a stillbirth and I would lose a child. And I
mm,
was terrified. And I remember speaking to different people about it. And of course, their first response is, that's not going to happen. Oh, that's just a fear. And then my question after the fact is, was it just a fear? Because if my son had survived, of course, the response would be, you were just fearful. It's your first baby. No worries. Every mother fears that. But because it happened, now people are saying, oh my God, that was your intuition. It must have been your intuition. But nobody
mm.
wanted to actually go there of, well, what happens if you do lose your child, And children die in hospitals all the time, like regardless of, having a wild pregnancy or not, or a home birth or free birth or hospital birth, this can happen, in
Mm.
a circumstance.
Absolutely, yes. And Jess Shine, who is the co-leader of the WAPIA, she is a former RN in OR, or excuse me, in labor and delivery, and she did say babies die all the time, and no one bats an eye. But it's a home birth or a free birth, and everybody loses their shit. And so, I think that that's a really important piece to consider is that we are so afraid to go there with mothers in the free birth space. I mean, I actually just. Uh, uh, memory just popped on my feed yesterday of a post I made in the Free Birth Society group in 2020, 3 months before she passed, where I was like, hey, have this feeling that I can't shake. Has anybody experienced this? Blah, 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 blah. And the entire comment section of 52 people like, oh, yeah, I had that. I was fine. Everything's fine. I wasn't heard or listened to. And so I just really want to say to anyone out there, if a mom comes to you or a sister comes to you and they're like, something does not feel right. I don't feel great. Don't just shaw it away. And it's not like we're going to manifest it by just talking about it, right? I have a friend who was like, I can't put any words to it or it'll make it happen. Yes, true. Those are fears as well. Like some of our fears as well can perpetuate. Our thoughts do become things, but some of us know, and it's different. And I think if we're able to go there with a mother, like, well, what does happen if your baby doesn't make it? What are we going to do? Do you want to have this? Do you want to bring this baby home? Do you want to have a ceremony? Do you not want to have a ceremony? Let's talk about it now. And as you talk about it, you begin to weave the story, and then you feel better and safer and secure. Then, if it doesn't happen, cool, you were prepared. If it does happen, you were prepared. And so it's just very important. And so, what's
Can I
ironic
ask you
also
a
is,
question with that? I'm curious, and I'm curious to both of you. Did your process undulate? Like, were you in kind of that process within your own inner world of like, this is my fear, and then you would kind of be like, no, 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 like that's not gonna happen. And did you have moments like I'm curious in like in the pregnancies when you were actually pregnant with your babies, did you have like moments where you could really see the birth and like, no, it's gonna be okay, and you could still connect to that thread, and then the fear would come in? Like, was there this like wave that you were riding, or did it feel like the fear was like a knowing that you were like maybe trying to push down?
for me, it was a knowing. But I think that I definitely pushed it away, especially as people continue to be like, no, it's fine. I'd be like, okay, you're right, it's fine. Like I said, I would have gone to get an ultrasound and they're like, oh, she's happy and healthy. Like she was bouncing. She was great. She was fine. She was on track. Everything was perfect. And I think that that was part of it because as, at least for me in my case, and I'll let Emma share too first. But yeah, actually, I'll let her go ahead and share first because mine leads into my next point, too, is about our destiny, right? So, did you experience that as well, Emma?
Um, yeah, I mean, I shared with a few people, and they were always like, "No, don't worry, like it's gonna be fine." Like I spoke to my partner about it, my stepmother, and different people, and my partner was like, "I think it's gonna be fine. Don't worry. Like it's okay. The trees keep telling me everything is as it should be." And we received that as like, "Okay, things are all right." But
Mm,
But I mean, there's a few different pieces that were really bananas because Floyd got stuck in my birth canal, and we called him our hummingbird baby because hummingbirds kept coming to me, and I ended up holding them in my hands. And I haven't shared the full hummingbird story yet, but these three hummingbirds came to me, and in each circumstance, it was like it was the last bleed before I got pregnant, the day that like the zygote would have implanted into my uterus, and then like a couple weeks after that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. The hummingbirds are here. It's his spirit's a hummingbird. But in each circumstance, I had to help these hummingbirds get unstuck from the places that they were trapped in. They flew into my home and they weren't able to get out on their own. And I had to help them come out. And only afterwards did it hit me like, oh, Floyd was stuck in my birth canal. He needed help to come out. Oh my God. And even we were watching this YouTube video of cavers, like cave divers. And there was this one guy who was cave diving and cave exploring into this one cave in particular called the birth canal. I don't know if you've heard of this particular story, but he goes into the birth canal. And the reason that this cave is called the birth canal is because it narrows and it kind of births you, and you come out and you have to shimmy out shoulder by shoulder. Like the way you go through it is very much like a birth through the birth canal, the vaginal canal. And my partner was building us this home while I was pregnant, and the staircase he was building was really narrow. And anyway, we watched this YouTube video, and this guy ends up getting stuck and taking a wrong turn, and he was stuck upside down, and he ended up passing away, and they weren't able to get him out, and so they had to seal him into this cave with cement. Like they left him in there and he got stuck. And we had an ongoing joke. The bigger I got as I would go up the stairs and, wobble at 8, 9 months pregnant. And the ongoing joke was, hey, Emma, don't get stuck in the birth canal. Don't get stuck in the birth canal. And it's only like months after Floyd passed away that we kept getting hit with even these like synchronicities. And oh my God, like, was that, what was that, and just the specifics of it. So there was the fear, the mental fear, the somatic fear in my body of like, oh my God, my brother was stillborn. I know that's a reality. Like, I know that not every baby makes it through the birth portal. I know that babies die at any age gestation, at any age after birth.
Mhm.
Babies and people die all the time, you know? And yeah, so there was just that lived experience of knowing that babies die, but then the fear in myself that I carried for 20 years before, um, that is that going to happen? And it's so interesting because now, as I contemplate having any, future children, at least in this moment, I don't have that fear. I'm facing
Mm.
what I thought I wouldn't be able to survive, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I went kind of the long way around to kind of share a few more specifics of how the fear showed up and how, yeah, how clear the signs in quotation
Yeah,
were,
totally.
you know.
Beautiful story. Yeah, that's incredible. Um, Same with me, like the other pregnancies, there was no real underlying fears at all. And the last pregnancy I had before her was completely wild. I didn't see anybody till the very end. I was secure. I knew with every kick, he was perfectly gonna, like, he's gonna be perfectly fine.
Mhm.
Um, and it was not that way. I even remember the morning of going into labor, I felt her like drop in my birth canal, and I like stopped and was like, oh my God. Like I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, it's exciting, like it's coming. It was like, ooh, it's coming. And like, but again, I like shoved it away. I literally remember like physically putting myself back together, like everything's okay, because I just didn't want to believe that it wasn't going to be okay. And in all reality, she was okay until she wasn't. And I genuinely, as I go into the next part of my story, Um, I believe she knew that if I had any inkling, that she wasn't well or wasn't going to be okay, I would have, of course, taken measures to go in or, save her life prior. Her death was in her death, so many prayers were answered that she was our gift. She literally came as a gift to give us this now knowing of life and death and the quantum. And I had been literally begging for years, 10 years actually prior, for my husband's like transformation spiritually. For the past like 7 years, I was like literally dragging him along on the spiritual journey and like, come on, come on. And he was just so stuck still in what he was, which again wasn't bad or wrong. I just needed someone to meet me where I was at. And like literally within days, he was like stripped bare. And the bonds that happened, but not only between us and our children, but between them as siblings, I had yearned for. I'd wanted them to like just put down these like barriers that they had against each other, and they were like melted into each other. The community around us learned so much. It was just like the gifts kept coming, and it was profoundly fucking painful. And the gifts kept coming. It was like the duality of it all was something that is genuinely unexplainable. I don't have words for it most of the time, but where we're at right now, like the home we have is because of her. Like I really genuinely mean like every synchronicity that has happened in my life since then, I know was like she was the catalyst. And I now have, a retreat little space that I had been praying for, just because we were able to get ahead in the quantum mindset that I don't, I can't even again explain like what the spark really was that made all of the other stuff possible, where we just got it all at the snap of a finger. But we were able to literally create our life from that foundation, from being broken down. We were able to rebuild and become what dreams are made of. And I believe that it was because of her and the gift she gave and the legacy and just what her death did for us. And again, that's awful to, in some circles, that's just awful to say, but I really think what's most important there is just that polarity and duality of pain and beauty and death and birth, and just that both things can be equally true at the same time. Things can be both tragic and be a gift. And how are we as humans to blur that line and make it okay in a society that says everything is black or white? It's this or that. It's all or nothing. And it's not true. And we continue to cultivate and perpetuate that in our society. And then we're faced with these things and we feel bad or wrong because how dare I? How could I believe that I'm receiving all of these gifts? And I didn't for a long time. I must be honest. It took probably about a year for me to really start being like, okay, let's unpack some of that happened. And I genuinely believe like our body only lets us heal what we can at a time. It's definitely a spiral. And we're coming up on her 5th birthday, and I know it's going to be hard. I miss her so much. Um, and I have to allow myself to give myself permission to enjoy what she's given us, because she sacrificed her life for it. And she just dipped her toe here for a second, and she got to um, give us so much. And I now get to be so much closer than, like, I literally get to be so much closer to her than I would be my other children ever, because she is literally in spirit form. She's with me always. Like, and we all know too, hopefully by now, that the DNA that our child leaves behind literally becomes a piece of us, literally becomes a part of us. So she is not only in me and a part of me, but her spirit is all around all the time. And so, um, yeah, that's kind of what I want to convey to the greater outside world is that not only is it um, not our right to know anybody's destiny, but what we don't know on the other side of death yet is what is profound and what's potent and what's going to change us, make us or break us, really. Because I could have totally taken it a different way. And oh my God, the guilt from having a free birth that society tries to put on you from that. Again, knowing that I have actually at least 15 friends whose babies have died in the hospital, and I'm the first free birth I know. Um, no, I don't know any home births yet still. I mean, I've heard of them, of course. I know that they happen, but I mean like personal life. And so just I could have let it go a different way. But I just refused to try and let myself even go down that path, despite comments from the public, hate mail, if you will, and all of that stuff. So that's just again what I want to convey, at least at the beginning, um, is
Well,
that the free birth community doesn't prepare you for death.
before,
It's not our right. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I just want to speak to this one word that you used because like you just shared so much beauty there. And you were saying that, the death of your daughter was really like this catalyst for like deeper connection with your other children, with your partner, your husband, like your healing. Like it allowed you to, you said could make or break you, but it broke you open an awareness and a consciousness of how deeply a mother, a woman, a person can love and all of these things. And you use the word sacrifice, like she sacrificed herself for this. And I remember hearing somebody describe sacrifice with the definition of to make sacred. To sacrifice is to make sacred. And I've had other people say the same thing about Floyd, like he sacrificed himself for, the work that you're going to be doing and all of these things. And I was like, he made sacred my body that will be the only home he's ever known. He made sacred my relationship with my partner where we can make love and cry at the same time. And of
Mm.
course there's going to be grief woven into that love. And he made sacred this work and the depth of this work and the type of conversations we can have, with women like you, with all these other beautiful wisdom keepers and storytellers. And he made sacred so many things that I have yet to even be aware of, and so did your daughter. This, like, she made sacred you and the
Mm.
story, you know. So I just wanted to offer that piece as
Thank you. That's beautiful. Sacrifices to make sacred. Thank you. That's good medicine. Delicious. From here, just a trigger warning for any people who might be watching. There are pictures shown of a deceased baby. This one is pretty, can't really see much, but as the pictures continue, they do get a little closer, and none of they're all very beautifully done. But I did want to throw out that trigger warning for anyone who might need it. But what a big part of what I want moms and dads to know is that you can bring your baby home, at least in the United States, in every state, you are able to bring your baby home. Um, and for me, the idea of like going to a cold, stark funeral home was like not something I wanted to do. I really needed to bring her home into my home, and in the places that she would have slept and loved and learned to crawl and walk and all those things. And so um, most memorials were all held in the home before the funeral industry became big business. And so I want people to know that bringing our dead home is ancient healing. It is an ancestral practice. It is a ritual within itself. And if you are able to know this ahead of time and can help the women in your community find these resources ahead of time and talk to the hospitals in your community that know this and aren't going to push back or um, tell you you cannot bring your baby home. Um, let's find them. Let's do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I love that you're bringing this piece here because that has been such an opposite experience for me where
Mhm.
for those that are listening that may not be aware, I woke up from a coma almost 3 days after my son was born and died. And I was intubated, I was on life support and strapped down to a hospital bed. And I was looking over some of the notes that I had written. Um, one of the first things I wrote was like, "Do you have support? Are you okay?" But the second thing I wrote was, "When can we bring the baby home for the burial?" And it was in this like scratchy scrawl. Like it was really, I was still on like coma drugs and all these things, and
Mhm.
um, but I wasn't allowed to do that. And I don't know why. And I don't have a lot of memories from that time. There's a lot of, you know, uh, yeah, there's a lot of in and out memories that I'm still piecing together. But in Canada, where I live, that was not an option, unfortunately. And I want to, since seeing this slide and hearing you speak about it, I'm going to be looking more into that to see, was that even a possibility? And, would he have needed to be embalmed? Was there because we ended up bringing his ashes home with us, of course, but we weren't allowed to bring his body. Um, and I so deeply wanted that. I woke up from a coma. That was one of the first things that I wrote down that I wanted to know. When can we bring him home? And again, I was in hospital for about 2 weeks afterwards because I had sepsis, my organs had shut down. So I don't know if that was also um, a factor involved where like I wouldn't have been able to go home anyway. And I know the hospital staff was like, "We want you to be close with him, and anytime you want to see him, let us know. We will bring him up to you." Um, but he was blue really fast. Like he turned blue really quickly, and he wasn't embalmed or anything. And so the decay set in. And again, like I don't know if that was some of the reasons, um, but yeah, this is such a big piece, and I did wish for the medicine of holding him in our home and still having that piece of like inviting friends and family up to see him, because I don't remember anybody saying congratulations. Understandably, I know why they didn't, but I remember looking at the nurses even and just crying, being like, "Look how beautiful he is. Isn't he so beautiful?" And they just kept saying, "Yeah, of course he's beautiful. Of course he is." And even when birth is fused with death, it's still birth, and there is still that piece of like, "Wow, congratulations. Look at this beautiful being that you made." You know?
Hmm. Absolutely. Congratulations is in order always. That is such an important facet. I long to be told congratulations so badly. And like I did get one person who had said it. Because everybody else is so afraid to hurt your feelings. And um, thank you for bringing that forward. Congratulations. Yeah, it's deserved. You still had a fucking baby. Yeah. Um, may I ask, so you did say you were able to hold at least your baby and like they brought him to you and you got to see him and love on him.
Yeah.
And then when it was time to, did you get to, you didn't get to do a burial then. You just did a cremation.
We did a cremation. We brought, yeah, we held him, and I sang to him, and we like painted the little box that he was cremated in, and um, my partner put his body into the cremation oven, And we just
Mm.
sat by the crematorium drinking tea. I think he sat with Hape. I didn't. I had a catheter for 7 weeks, and I was like, I'm not going to sit with any medicines right now. I'm just gonna be in this space.
Yeah.
We watched the smoke go up, and interestingly enough, actually, we went a year after the cremation day. He was cremated on the spring equinox, which was a
Mm.
really potent day. This like
Hmm.
birth mixed with death, as you described, like when the portal of birth is met with death.
Literally, yeah.
That to me is so spring equinox coded, where like it's the midway between light and dark, and there's so much of both. And so we sat and we had a picnic at the crematorium, with a couple of friends of ours. And when we arrived there, the man that was doing some other cremations a year later remembered us, and he was surprised, like, wow, it's been a year already. Oh my God. Like, it's kind of, beautiful that you're here today because I'm cremating, another. And he didn't finish the sentence, and he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I don't think I was supposed to tell you that. But it was just really beautiful. No one else was there except for us. And we were eating strawberries at that year marker, watching this dark smoke plume
Hmm.
out, and, holding that for the other mourners out there in the world that chose, for whatever reason, to not be present for the cremation. Um, Yeah, so I still have his ashes, and I'm not sure what to do with them, but it is interesting as well that like the building he was born in, there was a bunch of fires here last summer, and the building he was conceived in rather, um, burned to the ground. And so where he was conceived is also ashes, and I've been feeling into maybe even offering his ashes into that space.
Mm.
And I'm not sure yet. I'm still feeling into that, but yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Asking, yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, we did a lot of ancient death rites, and these sacred rites, at least in our ancestral cultures, all of them sent their dead home to their next space in heaven or time and space, whatever someone believes in. And so that was dressing and cleansing, adorning and crowning, and then memorial and celebration. And so we were very blessed that we got to call the funeral home we worked with was incredible. They fought for us a lot. The director of the funeral home sits on the board of funeral directors. Yeah. And he had said in his 30 years, no one had ever asked to bring a baby home. I was the first. He had only brought home one other person in his entire career, down to Kentucky, which is a town or a state south of us, who actually brought their dead home very often until well into the 90s, 2000s even. Um, One of the only places, at least, that did that like normally on a regular basis. And he called and was like, so you get to like choose what she gets to be cremated in, and what she'll be in the ceremony. And so we called around to both of our mothers, my husband and I, and was like, do you have any dresses that um we could put on her? And so my husband was able to um this ended up, excuse me, not my husband, this is my mother-in-law's baptismal gown that both of his sisters ended up wearing. So she got to be dressed in that. And so it is very important to me that we do touch our babies and that we do hold them, that we maneuver them. And if we're able to change their clothes in our case, because we were a free birth transfer, an autopsy was done. Um, so I personally was not comfortable going beneath the onesie, because was she had been taken apart and put together. And so, um, but Jess on the call that we just had also said that she's talked to moms and been like, hey, do you want to change their diaper or do you want to like put the onesie that you brought to the hospital with them? And I think that's so important. And the hospital system was so glad. So they should be sorry that they let someone like her go because she is to be able to tell a mom that like, hey, you could touch your baby is so important because we in our society we are like shoo it away, don't, and it's really important. I think it's very important. And so my mother had also found my baptismal gown. So that's what my daughter back here is wearing. Um, not my, excuse me, my first communion dress. I grew up Catholic. And so my sister-in-law, who is also an RN, and a great dear friend, Bree, who had come up to help me facilitate the ceremony, came up and helped me dress her, helped us get her prepared and ready. Let me go back this slide. So she's up here on our altar of our dresser. And so we took the whole thing down, and that's why the dresser's bare back there. But so the ceremony cloth that was up there, that ended up being under her um, casket once we took her out into the main room. And then we put the dress on her and tucked it in. My husband did decorate, adorn the casket with lavender because the embalming does have a specific scent, um, has a very potent odor, if you will. And even though I asked them, like, please don't use a lot, like, I really didn't want, in a perfect world, right? We would have been home. She would have died at home. I would have preserved her body with herbs and other things. But in the society that we live in, that's just not so far what was possible. So lavender helped to cover the scent. So I recommend that to moms all the time. Is yeah, to put some like florals in the casket as well. Probably jasmine would cover it up really well. Honeysuckle would be super sweet. Go ahead.
Rose, rose.
Rosemary.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Were you
Anything fragrant.
were you asked about having an autopsy done, or was that done without inquiry?
Yeah, we didn't get a choice.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Mm-mm.
were asked, and yeah, we declined. We were like, no. But
Mhm.
yeah, okay,
Ali, if
interesting.
you would have asked for that to not have happened, would that have been a choice or that was out of your hands?
I don't know. Again, because so she was already born once we were transferred, and so you're technically, treated like a criminal until they can prove that you're not. So I believe that that was like part of policy, like needing to see if she was poisoned or anything like that, I imagine.
And did they have any findings that you felt were supportive to your grief or processing?
I don't. Again, this happened in 2020, so this is like mid-pandemic, still shut down. And the autopsy center was backed up like 6 months. So I don't actually even know that I ever got those results. Um, and at the time, it probably wasn't somewhere I could go, like emotionally, but I have been interested to see like by now, like surely they're done by now. They did the autopsy, they had the results just as far as like publishing them and like making them available. Um, but yeah, I would say no. They said that her organs looked good and everything was perfect from that standpoint. But as far as like there's still a lot of questions. Like for in our circumstance, I am pretty positive that her placenta was just not viable anymore. When she came out, her cord was already white and limp. It was not full of blood. I don't know if it was compressed though, but a big part of that too was I believe that the placenta had already detached from my wall because when I got out to perform CPR on her, it kind of just felt there was no like contractions to push out a placenta. It fell out basically in a nutshell.
Yeah. Did she have a first breath at all, or was there any?
There was no first breath, but she did have a pulse by the time that um like when I checked her and then by the time the EMTs, paramedics got there, she still had a pulse, which is why they like swept her up so quickly and they took her. And Jess pointed out, at least on the call, like as soon as you call you're kind of like at their mercy from then on. And like because it was COVID, we had to ride in different ambulances. My husband had to follow along. He couldn't even ride with us. It was very traumatic. I would say they induced probably more trauma in the moment, just doing what they're taught to do. I'm not upset or mad at them. They were literally showing up to save my baby's life, they thought, and they thought that was the way. But in hindsight, I probably maybe would have waited to call a little bit even longer. In my head, of course, I was like, if there's anything that anybody can do to save her, that's what I want to happen, of course. But there were just so many aspects of like, yeah, the way it worked out. But anyway, yeah, I think I answered them. So we ended up getting pictures taken, which kind of felt really morbid at the time. I couldn't decide if I wanted to do it or not, but in the end, it just felt like what was best for us because this would be the only time ever that I had all of my children in one picture, and it really felt important to me at the time. Um, I have five children, born children, and then I do have another one that I've taken on, and am currently helping raise. But so here was the only time that I would ever have my living born children, excuse me, my born children in one picture, and it felt really important. So we had pictures done, which were kind of weird. Like, do we smile? Do we like? Obviously not, but I don't want to look like so sad that I can't put the picture up. So we just were like normal, just like didn't smile or cry or do anything. We just like interacted with each other. But we got to get some really beautiful pictures in the process. Um, and then we got to do a crowning ceremony. I had all this baby's breath that people had sent me, and I was like, oh my God, it would be so amazing if I could get this in a crown. I was just talking, and a friend was like, oh, thank you. And she took it, she whisked them away, and she crafted a little crown out of them. And so, um, crowning in many ancient cultures was symbolic of being crowned, like in the next life or being favored in their next life, to ensure that in that life they got to live, a life of beauty and all of that stuff in that realm. So he crowned her, and then of course cleansed her body with sage, to dispel negative energy. Um, got to do that for her as well. And then the memorial and celebration. We had so many people show up, so many lovely, beautiful people from our community came. We placed her on an altar with all of the roses we had been sent and mementos. Um, we had to put, you can kind of see there on the top picture, we had to put chairs outside on the porch because so many people actually showed up that we had to, there was overflow on the porch. Not everybody could fit in my living room at the time. But yeah, I encourage mamas to let their people know, like, don't forget to breathe, because it's kind of painful. But we sing songs of wisdom. Um, we whispered sweet nothings into her end at the end, like into her ear at the end, kind of like when people go up to give their last goodbyes. We ask people to whisper, their sweet nothings into her ear. And then we had so much lavender, excuse me, that I had everybody take a sprig of it to the bonfire to also send up any prayers on the fire, on the smoke of the fire. And then the water that we used under her casket, you can kind of see there by the shell on the ground. That kind of like in my head was symbolic of like all the love infused from her memorial, and then that's what we put the fire out with at the end of the night. So from there, creating an altar, I think, is really important, or a space in your home where the memory of your child gets to take up space. Because in a normal circumstance, this child would come home and they would be taking up space. They would have their own bed, their own bedroom. And I find that when we kind of like, again, pretend it didn't exist, we're literally creating a hole in our heart, in our family, in our world. And so allowing yourself to have your baby take up space is still very important in my eyes and my idea. So we put together this altar for her, more like a shrine, if you will, with art and mementos. Every year on her birthday, she gets a little present or trinket. On her first birthday, we asked people to bring just something from their homes that felt um, relevant. Uh, in our family, we have lots of cousins, and so we celebrate everybody's birthday quarterly. And so that's where I ask people to bring um, a little memento for their from their home, something that they wanted. And then on Christmas, or on Yule, she also gets a little trinket. So since then, since I took this photo, it's actually grown a lot because she's had two birthdays, and we've had two Yules since then as well. So, um, but yeah, continue to add to it. And I think it's really important on here. We have you can even see like the lavender that we used in her casket, art that people gave us, her fingerprints or her handprints and footprints, just lots of little things. Here's a kind of zoomed in version. Like we got this at the funeral home. Her ashes are in there. There's a fluorite tower that a friend had given us, and then oh yeah, her ultrasound pictures that I needed to prove that everything was okay. A blanket down here that a friend monogrammed her, or a family member monogrammed her name on. And then this is like the bra I was wearing in the birth tub with her, her little flower crown. A friend had written a very beautiful poem. So yeah, I just encourage moms to let their baby still take up space in their home, and forever. It doesn't have to be for a short time.
And so,
And so please go ahead.
yeah, I've got a question because there's so many different traditions around what to do with remains or cremains, and I've heard so many different things, and I still have Floyd's ashes, and I'm wondering, in that photo, I see that her ashes are in an urn there, and I'm just wondering, do you think that you're going to keep them? I know my dad still has my brother's ashes, and he's going to be buried with them. He's like, I want them with me all the time, even after I
Mm.
pass, and so I'm just curious what you're planning on doing, and also just sharing, like, I still have my pregnancy test, that just the way,
Yeah.
as you were talking about the ultrasound, like to prove that she was okay, I'm like, I still have the pregnancy test that, like, I, yeah, I just remember being so excited, and I still have that. And I've considered, like, do I get rid of it? I'm like, no, I can't. Like, it's another piece of, like, memorabilia or proof or something to say,
They
like,
existed.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So with our cremains, we do have it in ashes there. Each one of our children has a necklace with her ashes in it. And then every vacation we go on, we try to like find a waterfall, and the home that I believe she gifted us also has a little mini waterfall in the back. And so we usually will like go and put it somewhere around the waterfall. We don't ever put it in the waterfall. But yeah, so she travels with us. We take her with us on trips. Um, it just symbolically kind of really like I don't believe like I believe that her spirit is with me, but I don't that it's a tangible piece of her anymore. So it's just beautiful to still get to spread peace. Like she gets to still go with us places, and we get to memorialize her every trip that we take in her honor. So we take a trip every year. We call it our Oz trip, and we take it on the weekend that she passed. The closest week. We're always out of town on her birthday.
And
And
when is her birthday?
October 18th. Yeah, 10/18.
Put it in my calendar.
Aw, aw. Um, but yeah, so what we've chosen to do. We also have an Oz bear that I'll share about here in a second. Actually, I'll share about her now because that was where I was going next. So, um, I had really wanted to find someone who was going to like make a weighted bear for us or something symbolic of like with her specific weight, and I could not find anything And then as I was like looking at pictures one day, I was like, oh my gosh, that bear. So there's a little bear at the funeral home. You can see it in all these pictures in the background. Um, they had given us with it said like sorry for your loss. I can't really remember what the t-shirt said at this time, but I was like, oh my gosh, that could be the bear. So we took it and I stitch ripped out the back and I added a bunch of sand that is her weight. And I carried that around with her for a little bit too. And her ashes, a little bit of her ashes were in that as well. I also got a tattoo with a little bit of her ashes in it as well. Um, so there are ways that and that's what I kind of love about ashes, at least in our search circumstance, in our situation. I didn't want to go like, I didn't want her to be away from us, like buried somewhere else where I like had to go visit her. It was very important for me and us that she was like in our home. And so that was a really hard choice to make. And it's really hard, I know, for all families to make. Like, do we cremate them or do we bury them? If we had been on our forever property at that time, it's plausible that I would have buried her. But I would still really love the idea of like getting to separate her and like do different things with her. And these are all things I would not have been able to do if she was buried. As far as like, having necklace with her ashes in it and being able to take her on vacations. And we do take the Oz bear as well. And my little daughter, the closest in age to her, loves to take it everywhere and tell everybody about her dead sister. It's a little, for a lot of people, it's very uncomfortable. But it's just, we normalized it for them so much, getting to bring her home, that it just, they don't even really realize or recognize that something is wrong or bad. So yeah, she'll be like, my dead sister Auzlyn, like in the middle of a very fancy formal dinner, like she doesn't care. It's kind of comical.
And but how beautiful is that too, right? Like
I
being able
agree.
to, like I even me like children passing away has been such an ancestral thing where like I
I
always say I have
hear
three
that.
siblings, I have three siblings. My grandmother has 11 kids. My
Yeah.
great grandmother had 5 kids, and that includes
Wow.
the one that passed away, right? And just
You
and
are lineage,
yeah, and
literally.
this
Yeah.
this medicine that I can just see the women that have lost children in my lineage now, where I have more of a complete
Mm.
empathic, compassionate understanding of the depth that of their path and what they've walked. But I also, I've heard my dad where he's like, "Oh yeah, I've got 3 kids." I'm like, "You have four. You've got four."
Mm.
And I'll just like gently say it, and he just nods. And sometimes a tear falls, sometimes many tears fall, sometimes none fall. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, you're right. I've got four." I'm like, let's not, we're not leaving my brother out, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I must,
Well,
I just
mm,
want to chime in with some appreciation and some gratitude and also, like just what's coming up for me as I'm just kind of sitting back and listening to both of you share your stories and talk back and forth. It's just, and like it really kind of hit home when you shared that about your daughter, just like the innocence and the purity of like, oh yeah, my dead sister, right? Because you've normalized that in your home. You've made death a part of life in a really profound and beautiful way. And it's like, to think about the opposite, right? Like even to hear that, it's like, oh, whoa, yeah, that's strong. But like, what's the alternative, right? You're young. How old is your daughter?
um, she's been talking about it very openly and loudly since she was about 2.5 or 3.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
imagine.
So she's now 6, but
So what
and
we
it's
tell
still
her
pretty
like, oh,
normal.
don't talk about your sister
Yeah,
because you
don't.
might make other people uncomfortable. Well,
Amen.
people are
I didn't even consider.
people are suffering in their discomfort around death. Like she is
Yeah.
actually embodying medicine that this world needs. And
Mm.
it's like I shared on the last podcast actually, Ali, after we had the class, I, like shared openly like this piece around where you shared like, oh, I had this intuition and I felt like it was going to be my experience. And there's been a part of me that's like felt that in ways, you know? And so like I kind of like shared that vulnerably and said, you know, that feels really tender and scary to like speak out loud, because there is also like these layers of like, am I fearing my own fear? Am I perpetuating that possibility by speaking it? Is it a fear that every mother carries and undulates like in that process in ways like I don't know, you know, and it's impossible for me to know what my future holds, you know, and of course I don't pray to experience that, and I also, you know that I would receive so many gifts and so much medicine in that, and I can, you know, and so it's just to like be processing in my own consciousness as I'm interfacing with the story and kind of watching these different layers come up, right? But the biggest thing that's come up is no, we need this. Even if I have a fear, even if that is my future,
Mm,
hiding from it isn't going to benefit me. It's not gonna change what's meant to be or what will be. And yeah, it's just like, oh, it's almost like I can't find the words. Like it's such like a visceral, somatic response as you're talking of just like, like we need it, you know, like the world, like
mm,
we're suffering in our disconnect, in our avoidance, and our fear of death. And actually, you know, we can look to children and look to their innocence and their purity for so much wisdom. And I really feel that your daughter is embodying that. It's what would be normal if we didn't try to avoid pain collectively to
mm.
an extent.
Yeah. Amen. You're right. Thank you for bringing that forward because, yeah, there's been times when she's said it and it makes me uncomfortable because now I have to like explain to everybody how she has a dead sister. In like a really awkward moment, like I'm leaving the chiropractor's office or something. That was the most recent one. I've got a little sister. Yeah, she died and blah, 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 blah. And like, she's just so very open and free about it. And I love that for her. But we do need to face it ourselves because it's not hers. Our uncomfortability does not belong to her. And for me to put it on her like that would be not okay.
My
And my
question would be actually,
oldest,
is your discomfort even your discomfort, or is your discomfort the discomfort of are other people uncomfortable with her embodying
yeah,
that? Right,
that one.
right.
Yeah,
And
right.
so it's also really interesting. I'm reading this book called The Lost Art of Dying. And
Mm,
oh, it's so good that I have to pause as I read it and put it down and digest what's going on. But they speak
mm,
about infant death and child death as being a significantly more common thing historically because, there's been progress in the medical system, in the medical
yeah,
world.
a lot of technical advances.
Yeah, whether it's, polio vaccines or, using soap, like different things that are improving quality of life and allowing more people to be alive and to live and to have infant death decrease. But now we're on the other side of the spectrum where the ideology or the idea, I'm not sure what this would fall into, which category, but there's this belief that no children should die. Children should never die. Children are not supposed to die. It doesn't happen. I don't want to think about it. I don't
Mm,
want to talk about it. And we're at the other end of the spectrum where, 200 years ago, we all knew somebody that had a child that died, maybe multiple.
yeah.
We may have experienced that ourselves. And did people, process it or hold it or, integrate it at that time? Maybe, maybe not, but it was understood as a potential for life. Whereas now
Hmm.
there's an idea that nobody should ever have to die, that hospitals exist to not just save lives, but prolong life for better or for worse. And prolonging life doesn't necessarily equal quality of life. Prolonging life just means keeping the 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 physical body alive,
Mm,
functioning with a brainwave or a heartbeat or a pulse, right? And this book really discusses like these concepts that you're bringing forward of how can we die well? We are going to die. How can we die well? How can we have conversations around death, knowing that it's not the evil? death is not the evil. It is not a bad
Mm.
thing. It is a thing that we all meet. It is a threshold that we will all cross. And it's an unknown threshold. Every single religion, every single culture, every single group of people will share their own ideas. Whether you're an atheist or agnostic, or you're religious or you're spiritual, will have an idea of what is on the other side of that threshold. But just like birth, we don't know until we cross it. And there's no preparing us for how we're going to relate with that threshold when we are met with it, you know? And so, I mean, there's so many threads here of things that you've often talked about where you were talking about, you know, this holding of beauty and pain synonymously, and in my experience, being met with both prayer and projection, you know, and receiving what is mine, but leaving the rest at the door, and knowing that, you know, this is my path to walk with my son. And um, yeah, just anyway, so many pieces here.
Mm. Delicious. Yeah, I think that's all so important. Um, that death is actually not natural and normal, and we've just been playing God for a really long time, and now we think we're good at it.
And somewhere along
And
the
anytime some
oh, sorry.
what?
I was gonna say somewhere along the line we got a little too hedonistic, you know. I feel like the
Yeah.
like our relationship with pain and suffering and challenge, you know, we're yeah, we're very much so in a culture that avoids pain and chases pleasure.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's also
Hmm.
human. Like it's natural. That makes sense to not want to experience pain, you know?
It does, but I feel like when human beings are more like it's like look at the conversation that we're having, and because you have both gone through this very, you know, this experience of losing your babies in the birth portal, and you talk about these gifts and you talk about the medicine, and you know, I see neither of you shying away from the pain, you know, like you said, Ali, you said like, yeah, I didn't have like I couldn't just, you know, fall apart forever because I had to take care of my kids. So I grieved intensely and I grieved deeply, you know, and Emma, I've sat at your feet in a more intimate way, and you're meeting it, you're meeting every layer, you know, and so it's like, yes, of course we don't want to experience pain, but that doesn't mean that we run away from it. Of course, we're going to find more joy in feeling joy and happiness than we are in, you know, grieving. And, you know, the wisdom that could be embodied as a culture could be, you know, and I would love to hold that vision, is that we really, you know, soak up those moments of joy and happiness and ease and grace and peace and all of these things, but we also hold space and a certain level of openness to the full spectrum of our human experience, and really, you know, bow to these spaces of grievance or pain or suffering, you know, from the wisdom and the understanding that there's something really beautiful there for us too.
And the language
Yeah.
too, right? Like even like I was in labor for 3, 4 days. I would
Wow.
not describe labor as painful. I know a lot of women who describe labor as painful. And for me, I went into the birth portal being like, okay, I could label it as painful. I could label it as whatever. I could also try to understand what labor is as sensation, right? Um, and that's kind of also how I've been framing uh, this grief path that I'm now on, where I'm like, okay, is it painful? Yeah. Um, what other words would I use to describe it? What other sensations are there? Maybe there's contraction in my heart. Maybe there's, you know, and just finding uh, a new way to articulate this journey, right? Because yeah, the more that I allowed myself to open, and of course Floyd got stuck, and there's all these unknown reasons, but like the more that I stepped away from am I in pain or am I experiencing sensation, I was able to be open to that journey and the medicine that comes through that. And I've heard other women describe that in the same way. Um, and I don't want to go too far off. I want to make sure that we're continuing to follow this chronological thread as well.
Right, beautiful. I wanted to check in, Ali, and see kind of what you have left in your PowerPoints and what points you really want to highlight, and then
Yeah. Yeah, that's I it's so hard, to be given a timeline. We could talk about this all day, I'm sure. But I'm also sure we all have things we got to get back to. So yeah, so many juicy nuggets there, but yeah, of course we don't want to feel the pain, but are we able to meet the pain in a different way? I think is a beautiful conversation. And in our society, we've been so no to the pain and like I can fix this pain that it's more uncomfortable, I think, than it used to be when we were always in ceremony around like transmuting whatever the shit was that was blocking us and creating pain for us. And so yeah, we get to now learn a different way, maybe. So some main points I have here are ways to help grieving women in your community. Um, Kind of basic things, I would say, you know, offering to take living children on a play date or something fun out of the house is a really great one. Meal trains, that was super freaking helpful, not to have to like think about what am I gonna also now make for dinner for all the rest of us and or for breakfast and like I can barely get out of bed. How am I going to feed the rest of these people? So those are some really great options. Um, and then next is things that aren't helpful. And for me, a big one of the was people asking like, "What do you need?" And I know that sounds so counterproductive, honestly, a little bitchy, but I just did not want to be asked any more questions. Like I was so tired of the amount being thrown my way, especially as a free birthing mother transferring to the hospital. You are, again, like I said earlier, treated like a criminal until they can prove you're not. And there's like 130 questionnaire that you get upon arrival that the coroner grills you with for probably almost an hour. And on top of that, I have the funeral home calling and asking all of these questions that I need to answer. And in my case, CPS was called. So I now have to answer all of those questions as well. And so all of this trauma is now like being compounded. And then I have well-meaning and loving, very grateful people in my community. What do you need? How can I help? Someone asked me if they could bring me toilet paper, and I just remember being so annoyed by the question. Like, just the toilet paper. If I don't need it, I'll give it away.
It's not going
Just
to
like
go
I don't want to
bad.
answer. Yeah, I don't want to answer anybody else's questions. Like just let me be. And so that was a huge one for me. Telling the mother's story before she can. I did have a woman who was present, who was the photographer who went and told the story to um, many people before I got the chance to. Um, they also did centered themselves a little bit and made it about them. They made themselves, someone made them a meal train as well. Which, hey, like I said in the other training, I want to back up and say, like, everybody in the birth space is impacted and affected, and it is traumatic. And also, do not show up to birth spaces if you cannot hold it. So focusing only on the good or saying like, well, at least this happened, or I'm happy this happened, or whatever, like just be where the grieving person is. And I know it's all well-meaning and we're really trying hard to make people feel better, but like it's not necessary, it's not needed. And just like be like, yeah, can sucks. And just hold that with me. Don't try to make it better. Comparing your past experiences to them, there's of course if you're already a grieving mom, you're going to be searching for the other experiences. But to be like, well, in my case, this, like there is a time and a place for that. It will come, but within the first like weeks, days, hours, it's not helpful or necessary. Please don't do it. Um, all of
I
the cliche things, they're in a better place, you know, everything happens for a reason. Duh, I know. Like, can we just be here though right now, please? And then asking what happened or making up stories about what happened, which is really more the problem. Like I get people wanting to know what happened. And when the mom's ready, she will share her story always, usually. But making up stories about what happened or assuming anything like that is just not helpful. In my case, it was all very public. Like the birth was public, the death was public. I'm a very outward person. Like people know what I'm doing, usually if I'm doing it. Um, and so in my case, a lot of people were making up a lot of different stories about what they felt could have or did they thought did happen. And then it wasn't also helpful with having someone in the birth space going out and sharing from their perspective also. And this person is known to not share things truthfully now, I know. But anyway, all that to say, these are things that aren't helpful.
Well,
Right.
and
I do also just want to highlight the piece of, just echoing what you shared that Jess had shared at the beginning of the call, which is people have opinions and feel like they literally have a right to have an opinion and to talk about it and to be inquisitive and figure out what happened when it's a free birth or a home birth, right?
Yeah.
That's that
hmm
that's a thread that both of your stories carry is actually how involved other people felt that they had the right to be because of your choices of birthing at home.
well, and I think a lot of this, just going back to that, you know, list of what is not helpful, a lot of it falls under the centering piece, where it's like, oh, you want to know what happened. You're curious. You're uncomfortable with the level of pain, so you're gonna put your beliefs on, you know, he's in a better place or she's in a better place, or well, at least like all of these things, I can see how they could fall under the category of centering one's curiosities or discomforts or beliefs um, around this particular experience, this birth, this death experience, right?
Right.
hmm
That's where
hmm
talking about death, like our culture can change, right? Because we also like there also is just the grace of human error, right? Of like people like you have to actually become aware of something to be able to work with it in a more conscious way. And so because we are so hush hush pushed to the side with death, people don't have skills. And so
Yeah.
that's another thread to it, is like that's where there's even more substantial value in having these conversations. And, for everyone that listens to this podcast to just have those mental notes of like, okay, like that it's valuable. It's really valuable to just normalize these
Mm.
situations, right? So that people can learn and we can hold it
Mhm.
better
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Amen.
And death as well, though, like it taps onto this big safety piece for a lot of people and this like control piece for a lot of people. If I only, maybe things would have been different. If I had been
Mm.
there, maybe things would be different. If you were this or if this had happened. And death, when we really meet it, like when we are sitting forehead to forehead with this medicine woman that is death, and we are bowing at her feet and listening to what she has to say, we really, we end up relinquishing control of maybe things would be different. Maybe I could have avoided death if I did this, that, or the other thing.
hmm
Maybe things would be different. And in that hope that things would be different, we are wanting to actively turn away from death because the belief there is that the thing in front of me is something I don't want to experience because it is somehow wrong or bad, or because
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable. I don't want to face it or be with it.
Mm.
And again, death is not evil, it's not bad, it's uncomfortable, sure, but it can be beautiful as you've described so many times. And as you've talked about this beauty piece, I hear you say each time you preface, this might make people uncomfortable, or maybe this is wrong to say. Why do we even need to preface that?
Yeah.
And I understand why. And at the same time, maybe we need to show up and change the language of,
Mm.
I'm not going to preface this, and I
Yeah.
a recent Substack, personal Substack, where I was like, I don't do trigger warnings. If you're here in this space with me, you know the content that I put out, you know what I write, and you can click away if you don't want to continue to read or engage in something that I'm
Yeah.
sharing. But my life didn't come with a trigger warning. I didn't have a trigger warning letting me know, hey, your son's going to die. I just met it and lived with it.
Yeah.
Uh, and, for better, for worse, but that's kind of how I'm engaging with things. And there's no right or wrong here, right? I'm just kind of bringing.
Yeah, no, that's so important. You're right. You're right. And I think that there is a lot of like, that's so beautifully worded. There's so much judgment, I think, around it that I'll speak for myself, I do start to internalize if there's truth to like hearing someone say, like, oh, they chose to do it that way, they deserve it. Like, that kind of shit's wild and wicked. And I think even though I know that it's not the truth, right? My ego hears it, takes it as truth, and is like, oh, yeah, you're wrong. There's another place you're wrong. So then it does come up time to say it. And I'm like, oh, let me make it more palatable for you. Let me make it more comfortable for you. But you're right. What if there is no trigger warnings? What if we're just like, this is the way it is, this is how it is. And if it made you uncomfortable,
And so maybe
good.
we add that to the list of things that aren't helpful. Forcing a mother to filter her experience,
Mm,
that it will potentially trigger you less.
Mhm.
yes.
It's
Yes.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And I think meeting trigger warnings or all of these things in dialogue
Mm,
like this, like it's not just, hey, don't put a trigger warning, or hey, don't throw
no.
this preface away or whatever. Like, no, but let's talk about it. Why is it here? Why do we feel the need to say, oh yeah, by the way, this might make you uncomfortable? And, why do we feel the need to make something more palatable when maybe how we're discussing something is palatable enough for somebody, or maybe somebody is more familiar with sitting in what is uncomfortable, right? Even that assumption in what somebody can or cannot receive.
right.
Oh, yeah.
And that exactly,
Oh,
right? Because like what if it's not palatable? What if that's actually real and true and they are triggered into a big emotional response or into a process and then they have the opportunity to integrate it.
for
And
their aha, their
exactly
moment.
for their growth, for their expansion, right?
For the growth and expansion of humanity.
Right.
Amen. Oh, this is juicy.
Oh, yeah.
Delish. Oh my
Welcome to Birth the
God.
Middle Way.
Hello. Hi, it's nice to meet you. Really love these kind of conversations, by the way.
Yeah, us too.
Um, nice. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. All of it. All of it.
Yeah. And this
Yeah.
particular piece here, like ways to heal after all is quiet, I remember speaking actually, this might segue, it might not. But I remember speaking to another woman who lost her daughter in, it wasn't a free birth, but it was a birth attended by an unlicensed, unregistered midwife. And we connected when it was about that 3 month marker. And she was like, how are you doing? And I was like, pretty shitty. How are you doing? Like, you know, she was like, yeah, I mean, she remembered the 3 month mark being that point where people stopped asking how she was, people like the meal train stopped, like all of those things, that initial period had had been moved past. That was one of those thresholds, that 3 month mark. And she's like, that's when things got hard for her because the support had left, right? The support was there in the immediate aftermath, but at that point, things got quiet and she really
Yeah.
needed to be with it on her own and kind of be that newborn fawn, like learning to stand on wobbly feet.
Absolutely. I would say for me, I remember, so for in our situation it was a little bit different. It 3 months was definitely difficult, but even the immediate after. So we were very blessed to have our home filled with people in love from the minute almost people heard that she had passed. Um, and so within like a week of that, there it was a whirlwind almost. And honestly, sometimes it was too much. I needed a little bit more quiet. But then everybody left and the memorial was over and all of the people were gone and it was just me and my husband and the kids. And it was like I remember like going to sleep one night and my ears were ringing so loudly. Like it was so quiet that they were ringing. And now I personally believe ringing in the ears to be, many different things now. But at the time, I just remember how bad the quiet felt. And I had to, for me in my situation, I had to like really actively learn how to heal and to like face it, as we've said, and like look at it in the eye. And it helped a lot. And for me, some of those things that helped were pelvic floor therapy, specifically like pressure, counter pressure in the yoni, um, just for all of the birth trauma that comes from birthing in general. And like just there was a specific point she pushed that like literally made me just weep. And it was a huge release. And I really recommend that for moms who may have still be experiencing like pelvic discomfort after a stillbirth. So most moms are always experiencing pain after birth anyway. And I also recommend a pelvic floor therapist for them, but especially in this case too. Um, I'm I'm more so bringing it up because I find too that like moms who've experienced infant loss or stillbirth mostly, not just infant loss, but they don't remember that they just had a baby. Like you just had a child. You need all of the same healing. Not only now are you healing your heart and your emotions, but you're also still healing your body. Like your body's also still healing from childbirth. So pelvic floor therapy is just something in general that most moms can benefit from, I find.
Yeah.
Letter writing was another one, writing whatever you have to say in a letter. For us, we all wrote a letter and put it in her cremation basket to be burned with her. But if that's not an option, burn it, bury it in your own backyard. Um, uh, Uplifting media, there's a whole like genre of sad songs. And while I'm not saying like don't listen to that, I personally find like spinning those wounds sometimes isn't very helpful. And so listening to like high frequency music to help heal instead of like that like lower vibrational stuff that kind of keeps us stuck in loops, I find that to be helpful. Also, TV comedies I find to be very helpful, especially like after a few weeks and you're like just devastated and like the ability to know that you're gonna laugh again. It's okay. Like you will find humor in things again, especially as a humorous, silly, jokey person. Like finding the comedy was really helpful.
Oh
And
yeah.
then creating art was super.
We
Go
watched
ahead.
we watched Back to the Future, all of them.
Mm,
And I couldn't laugh,
nice.
but I was like, we need to watch that and just,
Yeah.
just something unrelated,
Yeah.
something like yeah. Yeah, I
For
found that.
us, it was The Office, which is
Yeah.
like super silly, stupid, hilarious at points, really obscene at other points. But it was really necessary. And we would watch it every night before bed and just like to be able to laugh again was huge. And then for us, creating art was very therapeutic. My husband is an artist, and he paint pours. So I have a fun short story about when she was picked up for the final time to be taken before the stop to take her to the crematorium. The funeral director came to get her. She had started to purple a little bit, the embalming fluid, because I had asked for not that much. She was starting to turn, and I really did want the kids to remember her. Like I didn't want to create any horrific images of her. I wanted them to remember her beautiful. And so we wrote those letters that I was just talking about and we put them in the casket. And as we drove away, my husband was like, "So what did you say in yours?" And I told him, like, just always to love us and show us signs. And then he was like, "Well, I told her to visit us in my dreams." And I was like, why didn't I think of that? And I started weeping. And she pulled away, and the sky turned like this beautiful shade of lavender purple. And we like hear this thing and we look at each other and we realize that a wall of rain is coming down the street, like literally like this to our house from where she just drove into. And it was in that moment that I knew like she's just here. Like, yes, she's going to visit dreams. Yes, she's going to give us signs, but like she's also here. She's here. And it was like such a profound moment. And from that came like this beautiful painting of my world shattering and being turned into light. And there's like gold flecks throughout it. And it just represents that moment so beautifully for us.
Okay, wait,
It's,
can you go back to the painting? Because as you were talking, like after my son was born, he had purpled a little bit because he had died like a couple days before he was born. Um, and as you were talking, you were saying, I wanted my children to remember like their sister, not, I forget the word that you used specifically, but before, she had started to turn a little bit blue and purple, and you wanted them to remember her beautiful. And as I'm looking at this painting, I'm seeing how prevalent the purple and the blue is and how beautiful it is. And I was like, oh my God, these are like Floyd. Like I have photos of him where he's so blue and so purple and he's so beautiful and the color is so deep. It's almost indigo. And it
mm,
hit me right in the heart. Like he's an indigo child. Like he's fucking indigo child. Oh my God.
mm,
Like the
mm.
beauty in that and
Oh,
the power in that, and just, and so is she, like, and just, and seeing that beauty of like, the lighter colors, the whites and just all of these colors and how it's then going into this purple. And it almost reminds me of like a galaxy and how the colors just shift and how she's
mm,
everything and every, there's just a lot
mm.
coming through and I have no words for it, but
Thank you. Yeah, I actually hadn't ever made the connection of like the purpling of the skin before. And so that's actually a really beautiful piece of it too, is that like that can still be beautiful. Um, I only have like two more slides, I think, and we'll end with the Moon Kai real quick. So we already went over questions. There were some types of therapies that didn't work. I'll just go over them: rapid resolution therapy, emotional polarity therapy, and flotation therapy. I won't really get into the depths of that, but specifically with flotation therapy, I do want moms to remember that you did just have birth, and sometimes there are some lacerations or open wounds down there, and so going and sitting in like a tub of salt might not be in your favor. It was a well-meaning gift, and I was like, yeah, that sounds great, and it was painful. So some sacred rites you can do as the Sarada ceremony, which marks the closure of the cycle and conception, given with a bath and a keeper washing your hair, similar to another is closing of the bones. Both are Latin ceremonies. So I do recommend, learning from indigenous Latinas when you do that. Um, and then keening, which is an old Irish and Scottish song of wailing. Um, and Ch the Chinese and African nations also practice this of like literally like just screaming and yelling. And in keening specifically, it's supposed to meant to help souls cross to the other side. And so if you look up keening on like YouTube or something, you can hear it, and it's actually very beautiful and painful, but beautiful. And then the last one is the rite of the womb. So there's also many other sacred rites, but these were the four that really seemed to help for me. Um, and so the rite of the womb is the 13th, is the Munai Kai, excuse me, is the 13th rite of the Munai Kai, and it's an energy transmission blessing that is meant to help heal the womb spaces. And it reminds us that the womb is not a place to store fear or pain. And the womb is a place to create and give birth to new life. So we are a lineage of women who remembers that we did not come to suffer in this life, but to be the creatress of our deepest longings and destinies. And I learned this ceremony probably so back in 2016. And for actually a while after Auzlyn's death, Auzlyn is her name. That's the first time I've gotten to say it. Sorry. Auzlyn. Um, I was like really disconnected from my womb. I did feel like it had betrayed me, that it was super numb. And so I was ironically leading a retreat and doing the ceremony, and like kind of just going through the motions. And another woman like tapped in and was like, hey, let's massage our wombs. And like it was the first time I had actually felt my womb space in a really long time. And we were in the middle of this rite of the womb, and I did it again, and it actually helped release a lot for me as well. So all of that to say, like some of the things we learn along the way are meant to also help us in the end, like when we need them. And so we're all collecting, especially as medicine women, right? We're all collecting our tools and our tool bags, and we get to learn these rites and these tools and these ancient rituals so that not only when we need them, we have them, but we can also give them to our community. So, yeah, this is the end. And I'm happy to do the rite of the womb with you all real quick if you have, the extra few minutes. But
I also studied the Munai Key. I was taught Munai Key, but here in Peru, but I haven't gone over them in a while. You reminded me on the class, so I would love to go over one. Maybe we stop sharing your screen,
okay,
so that
yeah,
people that are
let's do it.
watching can see you a bit better. I did also
Yeah, so
highlight a piece that you shared, in this, like in processing the Monai Key right, and the acknowledging the womb is this portal of creation. Um, and kind of what came to me in that moment, what I saw was, you sharing these prayers that you had for your life. I really pray for my husband to awaken spiritually and to kind of, deepen in himself. I hold this deep prayer for my children to be connected in beautiful ways. And your womb did create that through Auzlyn, and to also just like keep that, like to further that, right? Because you named her and you gave her, the um acknowledgement for that process, but the thread continues to you, to your womb
mm,
space, and so to just kind of, yeah, expand that piece that you already shared and see that like your womb did birth into your life really big in
mm,
prayers of connection and love and creation through your daughter.
thank you. Yeah, true story. That did happen. Yeah, thank you for that acknowledgement. Yeah, special. So this rite is like I said, the Muna Key, rite of the womb. I did learn it Kai, but I appreciate the translation, especially because Peruvians are much closer to this ancient rite than we are over here in the Midwest. But yeah, so I'll call it in. So I am a keeper of this lineage. It was passed to me. So I'll call it in and I'll pass it to my womb, and then I will pass it to you, and then you will call it in and you will pass it to your womb, and then you'll pass it to the space as well. And so for all women on the call or watching, please of course join in on this piece with us, and really feel into your womb space. So the womb is not a place to store fear or pain. The womb is a place to create and give birth to life. The womb is not a place to store fear or pain. The womb is to create and give birth to new life. The womb is not a place to store fear or pain. The womb is to create and give birth to new life. And then you will call it in, ladies, yourself.
The womb is not a place to store pain or grief. It is a place to create and give birth to new life.
Birth to new life.
The womb is not a place to store pain. Is it grief? Discomfort,
Fear or pain.
fear, or pain? The womb is not a place to store fear or pain.
The womb is a place
Womb
to give birth to new
is
life.
a place to give birth to new life.
Let's try again one more time now that we know the words. The womb is not a place to store fear, or pain. The womb is to create and give birth to new life. Mm-hmm.
The womb
It's not
place
Place to store fear or pain.
is a place.
and then together in the space. And to all the people listening, thank you for being here. The womb is not a place to store fear or pain. The womb is to create and give birth to new life.
Thank you, Ali, so much
So it is.
for all that you shared.
Thank you.
Thank you for your story. Thank you for your medicine.
Thank you for allowing me to share and be here. I'm honored, grateful. Thank you.
Beautiful.